Millionaire CEO was driving his fiancée home until he spotted his ex with two children who had his eyes. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's Family, your own family story channel. Heavenly God, we place our hearts before you today. Please wrap every woman in this family with your divine protection. Give her strength when she is tired, peace when she is overwhelmed, and honor for every silent sacrifice she makes. Bless her health, calm her mind, and reward her patience. She is the backbone of love, the keeper of homes, the quiet force that holds generations together. May no woman here ever feel unseen, unheard, or unloved. Lift her spirit, guard her dignity, and fill her life with respect, warmth, and grace. My beautiful family, I speak from my heart. When you stay, when you listen, when you engage, it gives meaning to every word I write. I pour love, emotion, and truth into these stories for you. Your presence matters more than you know. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write. I am with Mr. Peter. Let's start with love. The rain came down like bullets against the windshield, and Sam Curran should have been thinking about the merger paperwork waiting on his desk, or the quarterly reports his board expected tomorrow morning, or even the woman sitting beside him in the passenger seat of his Mercedes. Instead, he was thinking about how the streetlights made the wet pavement look like fractured glass, and how fractured glass reminded him of broken promises, and how broken promises reminded him of a girl he'd destroyed a lifetime ago. Sam, you're going 70 in a 45 zone. Monica's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp and surgical. She was good at that, cutting through things. It was why she ran the most successful law firm in the city before she turned 35, why she wore her hair pulled back so tight it could have been a weapon, why she'd said yes when he proposed last month with a ring that cost more than most people's cars. He eased off the accelerator, watching the speedometer drop. Sorry, mind somewhere else. The Wellington acquisition? Something like that. It wasn't the Wellington acquisition, though that deal was massive enough to occupy any CEO's full attention. Wellington Industries was buying out Curran Tech in a merger that would make Sam wealthier than he already was, if such a thing mattered anymore. The paperwork was clean, the numbers were clean. Everything was clean except the pit in Sam's stomach that had been growing since his CFO mentioned Wellington's lead negotiator would be personally overseeing the transition, Isabella Grace. The name had appeared in an email subject line, and Sam had stared at it for 20 minutes before he could breathe properly again. He'd Googled her immediately, hands shaking like a teenager's, and found a professional headshot that had stopped his heart. The same face, but different, sharper, colder, more beautiful in the way that glaciers are beautiful, stunning and utterly unreachable. She was Wellington's youngest chief operations officer. The business magazines called her the architect because she restructured failing companies with the precision of someone building cathedrals. She had a corner office on the 42nd floor. She gave keynote speeches at conferences where people paid thousands just to hear her talk about operational efficiency. And Sam had left her pregnant and alone when they were both young enough to believe in forevers. Sam! Monica's scream jerked his attention back to the road just in time to see the bus stop shelter, the woman standing beneath it, and the two small figures pressed against her sides. He slammed the brakes hard enough that the seatbelt locked across his chest, hard enough that Monica's hand shot out to brace against the dashboard. The car stopped 3 feet from the curb. Jesus Christ, what is wrong with you tonight? Monica's voice was ice over fury, the particular combination she used in courtrooms to destroy witnesses. But Sam couldn't answer because he was staring through the rain-streaked window at the woman under the bus stop shelter, and the world had gone completely silent except for the drumming of his own heartbeat. Isabella Grace stood there like she'd been waiting for him her entire life, though he knew that was impossible. Knew it was just coincidence, just random chance on a random Tuesday in a city of millions. She wore a charcoal business suit that probably cost more than the rent on the apartment she'd lived in when he knew her. Her hair was natural now, a crown of coils pulled back from her face, elegant and unapologetic. She had one arm around each of the two boys standing beside her, identical boys with matching backpacks, matching raincoats, matching faces, matching eyes. Sam's eyes, green like new leaves, green like his mother's jade necklace, green like the color of every nightmare he'd had for the past several years, where he imagined what his children might look like if he'd stayed. "Who is that?" Monica's voice had changed, sharpened into something that could draw blood. "Nobody," Sam heard himself say, and the lie tasted like ash. But Monica wasn't stupid. Monica made her fortune reading people's faces in depositions, catching the micro-expressions that revealed truth. She was staring at him now with the same intensity she used to dismantle perjury, and Sam knew his face was betraying him with every passing second. Isabella hadn't seen them yet. She was crouched down to the boys' level, adjusting one of their hoods, saying something that made both of them laugh. Even through the rain and the distance, Sam could see the way she smiled at them. The kind of smile that held entire universes of love. The kind of smile she used to give him before he taught her that love was just another thing that could be weaponized and abandoned. One of the boys pointed at something down the street. The other was explaining something with his hands, making elaborate gestures that his mother watched with patient attention. They looked warm despite the rain, complete despite the missing father, happy despite every terrible thing Sam had done to them before they were even born. "Drive," Monica said. Sam's hands wouldn't move toward the steering wheel. "Drive, or I'm getting out of this car right now." Something in her voice, not anger anymore, but something worse, something that sounded like understanding, finally made him respond. He pulled back into traffic slowly, carefully, like a man who'd just witnessed his own funeral. In the rearview mirror, he watched Isabella stand up, watched her glance at the departing Mercedes without recognition, watched her shepherd the boys toward the approaching bus with the casual grace of a woman who'd learned to do everything alone. The Wellington Industries badge swung from her neck on a lanyard, catching the streetlight for just a moment before the bus blocked his view. "How long ago?" Monica asked. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult me by lying twice in the same minute." Her voice was steady, almost gentle, which was somehow worse than fury. "How long ago did you leave her?" Sam's throat felt like broken glass. "Long time. I don't remember exactly." "You remember exactly." Monica was looking straight ahead now, her profile perfect and unreachable. Men always remember exactly when they run away. He wanted to argue, to explain, to tell her that it wasn't like that, except it was exactly like that. He'd run away from Isabella the moment she'd told him she was pregnant, run from the responsibility and the fear and the enormous weight of another person's future resting in his inadequate hands. He'd run because his father was dying and the company was failing and there was debt everywhere, drowning him, and he couldn't save everyone, so he saved no one except himself. "The Wellington acquisition," Monica said quietly. "She's their COO." "Yes." "So she's about to become your boss?" "Effectively, yes." Monica laughed, but it held no humor. "You're going to lose everything, aren't you? The company, the merger, probably your sanity, all because you couldn't keep your past buried where it belonged. I didn't know she worked there. I didn't know she'd become extraordinary." Monica turned to look at him fully now, and there was something almost pitying in her expression. "Did you think she'd just disappear, that she'd stay small and broken because you left her that way?" Sam pulled up to Monica's apartment building, a glass tower in the financial district that reflected city lights like scattered diamonds. She didn't move to get out. "Those boys," she said, "they have your eyes." "I know." "Does she know you saw her?" "No." Monica nodded slowly, then reached into her purse and pulled out the engagement ring he'd given her last month. She set it carefully in the cup holder between them, where it caught the dashboard light and threw small rainbows across the leather interior. "Monica, you looked at her like I don't exist," she said simply. "Like I never existed. Like nothing and no one has ever existed except her and those children. I deserve better than being someone's consolation prize." "You're not." "Yes, I am." She opened the door, letting rain gust into the car's warm interior. "I've been a placeholder for whatever you were running from, and I didn't even know it until tonight. So thank you, actually. Thank you for showing me before I wasted any more time." She stepped out into the rain, elegant, even in exit, and closed the door with a soft click that sounded like an ending. Sam sat in his car for a long time, watching the ring throw colored light across his dashboard, watching the rain turn the windshield into a waterfall, watching the world blur into something unrecognizable. Then he put the car in drive and went back to the bus stop. It was empty. Of course it was empty. The bus had come and gone, carrying Isabella and her children, his children, to whatever life they'd built in his absence. The shelter was just wet concrete and flickering fluorescent light and the ghost of his own reflection in the glass. Sam Curran was a millionaire who'd built an empire from nothing, who commanded boardrooms and closed deals and made decisions that affected thousands of lives. But sitting there in the rain, staring at an empty bus stop, he felt like exactly what he was, a man who'd thrown away forever and spent every day since pretending the loss didn't matter. The Wellington acquisition meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. In a few days, he would sit across a conference table from Isabella Grace and pretend they were strangers. The thought made him want to drive his car into the ocean. Instead, he drove home to his empty penthouse and spent the night staring at his phone, typing and deleting the same message over and over. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry." But there was no number to send it to, no address to deliver it to, no way to reach back through time and undo the moment when he chose fear over love. So he sat in the dark and waited for Monday, when the past would walk through his door, wearing a business suit and carrying the weight of everything he'd destroyed. And somewhere across the city, in an apartment he'd never seen, two boys with his eyes probably slept in matching beds while their mother, the most extraordinary woman he'd ever known, tucked them in and kissed their foreheads and told them they were loved, without him, because of him, despite him. The rain kept falling, Monday was coming, and Sam Curran had absolutely no idea how to survive the resurrection of his own ghost. Chapter 2. The Queen Who Wore Her Scars. Isabella Grace woke at 5 in the morning, like she did every morning, in the silent darkness before the city remembered how to breathe. She lay still for a moment, listening to the sound of her sons sleeping in the room next door. Asta's soft whistling snore, Oleander's occasional sleep-talking murmur. These were the sounds that had kept her sane when everything else fell apart. She rose without turning on lights, moving through her apartment like a ghost who knew every corner by heart. The coffee maker started with a quiet hiss. While it brewed, she stood at the window and watched the city wake up below her. All those millions of people with their millions of problems, none of them knowing that the woman in the apartment on the 18th floor had once been so broken she couldn't remember how to stand. That woman was dead now. Isabella had killed her deliberately, methodically, the way you kill anything you can't afford to let live. The apartment was modest by her current salary standards. She could afford something in the towers where executives lived, something with doormen and marble lobbies and views that made you feel like you owned the sky. But she'd chosen this place deliberately, close to a good public school, near the park, where her mother used to take her as a child, in a neighborhood where people still said good morning to strangers. She wanted her boys to grow up understanding that money was a tool, not an identity. Her mother had scrubbed floors in the building where Isabella now had a corner office. She would never forget that. Isabella poured her coffee and opened her laptop, scanning through the overnight emails from Wellington's international offices. There were 17 new messages, most of them routine, but one made her pause, made her coffee cup stop halfway to her lips. Subject: Current Tech Acquisition. Final preparations. She stared at the name for longer than necessary. Curran, Sam Curran. The ghost she'd buried so deep she'd convinced herself he was fiction, something she'd imagined during a fever dream of youth and stupidity. But he was real. He'd built a tech company that Wellington wanted to acquire, and starting Monday, she would be the one dismantling his empire piece by piece, restructuring it into something useful, erasing his fingerprints from everything he'd built. The irony tasted like poison and power mixed together. Isabella clicked open the file and studied his company profile. Current Tech had grown exponentially over the past several years, focusing on data security solutions for fortune companies. The growth pattern was aggressive, almost reckless, the kind of expansion that suggested someone running from something, or toward something, or just running, period, because staying still meant thinking about what you'd left behind. There was a photo attached to his bio, professional headshot, the kind every CEO had. He wore a suit that probably cost more than the monthly rent on the apartment they'd shared when she was pregnant. His hair was shorter now, touched with grey at the temples. He looked successful, confident, like a man who slept well at night. She wondered if he ever thought about her. Then she closed the laptop before that thought could grow teeth. "Mama?" Isabella turned to find Oleander standing in the doorway, rubbing his eyes with one fist. He was wearing his astronomy pajamas, the ones covered in constellations that Asta had helped him identify. Her sons were so different and so completely the same, like two halves of one impossible whole. "Good morning, Flower." She held out her arms and he climbed into her lap, still warm with sleep. "Bad dream." "No dream. Just woke up." He nestled against her chest. "Mama, why do you wake up so early?" "To get work done before you two wake up and need breakfast." "Oh." He nestled against her chest. "That makes sense." Oleander pulled back slightly. "Is something wrong?" This was the danger of raising perceptive children. They saw through everything. "Nothing's wrong, baby. Mama just has a big meeting Monday. Important business stuff." "Will you have to fire people?" Asta appeared in the doorway now, fully awake despite the early hour. He was always awake when his brother was awake, like they operated on some shared frequency. "You said sometimes people lose their jobs when companies change." Isabella's heart cracked a little. Her sons understood more than most kids their age. They'd had to. They knew their mother's job was important, but sometimes hard. They knew that grown-up decisions weren't always simple. "Maybe," she admitted, "but I'll try to save as many jobs as I can. That's what I do. I help fix companies when they're broken. Like when you fixed my telescope." Asta climbed onto the couch beside them, exactly like that. "But people aren't telescopes," Oleander said. "You can't just use glue." Sometimes Isabella forgot they were only young children. Then they said things like that and reminded her they'd been shaped by circumstances most kids their age couldn't imagine. A single mother working impossible hours, financial stress carefully hidden but never quite invisible, the absence of a father they'd never asked about because they'd learned early that some questions hurt too much to answer. "No," she agreed. "You can't just glue people back together, but sometimes you can help them fix themselves." Asta leaned against her shoulder. "You work a lot, Mama, like all the time." The observation landed harder than any formal question could. "I work hard so we can have a good life." "We already have a good life," Oleander said. "We just want you home more." Isabella laughed despite herself, pulling both boys closer. This was her life. These two impossible miracles who saw too much and asked questions she couldn't always answer. They were named after flowers in her grandmother's garden, Asta for the star-shaped blooms, Oleander for the resilient beauty. Her grandmother had died while Isabella was pregnant, never knowing she'd have great-grandsons who would carry pieces of her forward into the world. "I'm not working too much," Isabella said carefully. "I'm just making sure you two have everything you need." "We don't need a lot of stuff," Astor said. "We just want you to be less tired." "Yeah," Oleander agreed. "You should smile more, not just at us, at everything." Out of the mouths of children came the simplest truths. "I'll try to smile more," Isabella promised. "Deal?" "Deal," both boys said together. They sat together as the sun rose over the city, three people who'd learned to be a family, despite everything trying to tell them they were incomplete. Isabella held her sons and thought about Monday's meeting, about sitting across from Sam Curran and pretending her heart wasn't a graveyard of everything she'd once believed about love. He would see her as the architect, the woman who restructured companies with surgical precision. He would see the corner office and the expensive suit and the reputation that preceded her into every boardroom. He would see power. He wouldn't see the girl who'd cried herself to sleep for months after he left. He wouldn't see the woman who'd worked 3 jobs while pregnant with twins, who'd taken night classes while nursing babies, who'd climbed from poverty to power on a ladder built from spite and survival, and the desperate need to prove that she was worth more than the man who'd thrown her away. He wouldn't see her scars. That was exactly how she wanted it. "Mama," Oleander's voice was soft. "If you could wish for anything, what would it be?" Isabella looked down at her sons, these 2 perfect disasters who'd saved her life by giving her something worth living for. "I'd wish for you two to always be this brave," she said. "To always ask questions and not be scared of the answers." "But what about for you?" Astor pressed. "Not for us, just you." What did she want for herself? She'd spent so long wanting things for her children that she'd forgotten she was allowed to have her own wishes. "I want," she said slowly, "to not be so tired all the time." The boys looked at each other. "You should take more breaks," Oleander said simply. "Yeah," Astor agreed. "We don't need you to be perfect. We just need you to not be so tired." And there it was again. The devastating perception that made her wonder if she'd done them a disservice by raising them to see through pretty lies. "Maybe," she admitted, "but taking breaks means trusting other people, and I'm not very good at that." "Why not?" Astor asked, with the blunt curiosity of someone who hadn't learned yet that some questions were too painful to answer honestly. "Because the last person I trusted destroyed me," Isabella thought but didn't say. "Because I learned that depending on anyone except yourself is just another word for weakness. Because," she said carefully, "I've learned it's safer to do things myself." "That sounds lonely," Oleander observed. It was. God, it was so lonely, but loneliness was safer than heartbreak, and Isabella had survived heartbreak once already. She wasn't sure she'd survive it again. "Sometimes safety is lonely," she agreed. "But that's okay. I have you two." "But who do you have when you need someone?" Astor asked. "Like when we're at school and you're sad or tired or scared?" "Nobody," Isabella thought. "I have nobody because I learned to need nobody." "I have myself," she said instead, "and that's enough." But it wasn't, not really, and they all knew it, even if the boys were too young to name it. Isabella Grace had built an empire from ashes. She had money and power and respect. She had a corner office and a reputation that made grown men nervous. She had 2 extraordinary sons who would grow up to change the world. But she didn't have rest. She didn't have peace. She didn't have the luxury of trusting anyone outside this tight circle of 3. And starting Monday, she would have to sit across from the man who'd taught her that trust was just another word for weakness. Her phone buzzed with a reminder: review current acquisition materials, final prep before Monday. Isabella set her sons gently aside and stood, transforming back into the architect, the woman who didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, didn't feel anything that couldn't be weaponized into strategy. "Pancakes for breakfast?" she asked, and both boys cheered. She made pancakes shaped like stars because Asta loved astronomy. She made them shaped like flowers because Oleander loved anything that grew. She made them with chocolate chips hidden inside because both boys loved surprises. And she didn't let herself think about Sam Curran or Monday's meeting or the way her hands shook slightly as she flipped each pancake. She was Isabella Grace, the youngest COO in Wellington's history, the woman who'd rebuilt herself from ruins. Sam Curran was just another acquisition, just another company to restructure, just another ghost to bury. The boys ate their pancakes and talked about school projects and weekend plans, and Isabella smiled at them like the world wasn't about to crack open and swallow her whole, because that was what mothers did. They smiled through earthquakes, and Monday was coming whether she was ready or not. Chapter 3. The reason he ran, Sam Curran's father, died on a Tuesday in March, and by Wednesday morning the vultures were already circling. This was years ago, back when Sam was young enough to believe that hard work and good intentions could solve anything, back before Isabella's pregnancy test turned positive and made him realize that some problems didn't have solutions, only consequences. He sat in the hospital waiting room with paperwork that might as well have been written in a foreign language, medical bills, funeral arrangements, insurance claims that wouldn't cover half of what they owed. His father had been sick for months, the kind of sick that hollowed out a man from the inside while leaving his shell intact. Cancer, the doctors said, though they used more precise language that Sam couldn't remember now. All he remembered was the number at the bottom of the final bill, a figure so large it seemed fictional. His phone rang for the 17th time that day. Same number, same people. Sam answered, because ignoring them only made things worse. "Mr. Curran." The voice on the other end was smooth, professional, the kind of voice that made threats sound like friendly advice. "We've been trying to reach you. My father just died. Our condolences. However, this doesn't change the terms of your agreement." The agreement. Right. The money Sam had borrowed to keep his father's failing company alive, back when he still believed he could save it. The money that came from people who didn't offer payment plans or extensions or sympathy. The money that came with interest rates that compounded faster than hope could grow. "I need more time," Sam said, though he knew it was pointless. "Time is what you've run out of, Mr. Curran. We've been patient. We've been understanding. But patience has limits." Sam closed his eyes and saw Isabella's face, the way she'd looked last night when she told him about the pregnancy. Terrified, hopeful, glowing with something he couldn't name because he'd never felt it himself. The absolute certainty that life was worth creating even when everything else was falling apart. She'd told him it was twins, 2 lives depending on him, in addition to the debt collectors and the dying company and the ghost of his father who'd spent his last coherent moments apologizing for leaving Sam with this mess. "How much time do I have?" Sam asked. "You have until we decide you've run out. Could be weeks. Could be days. Could be tonight." The line went dead. Sam sat in the hospital waiting room and did math in his head. The money he owed versus the money he had. The cost of 2 babies versus the cost of keeping himself alive long enough to earn it. The weight of Isabella's trust versus the weight of strangers who knew how to hurt people in ways that didn't leave visible scars. There was no equation that balanced. He could choose his father's legacy and the debt collectors and his own survival. Or he could choose Isabella and 2 babies who didn't exist yet except as possibilities, as hope, as futures he couldn't afford to build. So he chose himself. He chose wrong, but he chose himself. Sam left the hospital and went straight to Isabella's apartment, the tiny studio she could barely afford on her waitress salary. She opened the door with flour on her hands. She'd been baking something sweet from the smell of it, probably to celebrate the pregnancy news because she believed in celebrating things even when celebrations seemed premature. "Hey!" Her smile could have powered the whole city. "I was just making—" "I can't do this." The smile died slowly, like watching a star collapse. "Can't do what?" "This, us, the baby situation, any of it." Isabella's hands went instinctively to her stomach, protective even though there was nothing to see yet. "Baby situation? Sam, we're having twins. That's not a situation. That's our children." "Your children," he corrected, and hated himself even as the words left his mouth. "I never agreed to this. You were there when we made a mistake. I was there when we made a mistake." He watched something break inside her, something fundamental and irreparable. Years later, he would still remember the exact expression on her face, the way love transformed into understanding, and understanding transformed into the kind of pain that reshapes a person's entire architecture. "You're leaving," she said flatly, not a question. "I'm not ready for this. I have responsibilities. My father's company, the debt, everything. I'm pregnant with your children, and you're talking about a company. It's not just a company. It's my father's legacy. It's everything he built. What about everything we're building?" Sam couldn't look at her anymore. "We're not building anything. We're young and stupid and way over our heads. You'll be better off without me dragging you down. That's not your decision to make. Actually, it is, and I'm making it." He turned to leave and Isabella grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so small. "If you walk out that door, don't come back. I won't be here waiting when you decide to grow up." Sam pulled his arm free. "I know." "Do you? Do you really understand what you're doing? You're not just leaving me. You're abandoning two human beings who will grow up knowing their father chose a company over them. They'll grow up better than if they grew up with me." Isabella laughed, bitter and broken. "You actually believe that? You actually think this is noble, walking away? But it's just cowardice dressed up as sacrifice." She was right. Of course she was right. But right didn't pay debt collectors. Right didn't keep men in expensive suits from making threats that kept you awake at night. Right was a luxury Sam couldn't afford. "I'm sorry," he said, knowing it meant nothing. "Get out. Isabella, get out before I start screaming and never stop." So he left, walked out of her apartment and her life, drove home through streets that looked exactly the same as they had an hour ago, even though everything had changed irrevocably. He paid the debt collectors with money he borrowed from someone else, sold his father's company for parts, and used what was left to start Current Tech in a garage with second-hand equipment and a business plan built on spite. The company grew, the debt got paid, the threats stopped coming, and Isabella disappeared so completely that some days Sam could almost convince himself she'd never existed at all. But then he'd see pregnant women on the street, or fathers with their children, or tiny pairs of shoes in store windows, and he'd remember that somewhere in the world there were two people with his DNA growing up without him. He told himself they were better off. He told himself he'd made the right choice. He told himself these lies so many times they almost became true. Almost. Now, standing in his penthouse years later, staring at the Wellington acquisition papers, Sam understood that he'd been paying for that decision every day since he made it. He'd built an empire on blood money and abandonment. He'd climbed to success using a ladder made of other people's pain, mostly his own, but also Isabella's, and two children who'd never asked to be born into his cowardice. The Wellington deal would make him even wealthier, set him up for life, give him everything except the one thing that mattered. And the woman who would oversee his company's dismantling was the same woman he'd destroyed when they were both young enough to believe in second chances. Sam laughed at the cosmic joke of it all. Then he opened his laptop and started researching everything he could find about Isabella Grace, the woman he'd left behind, and the queen she'd become without him. Every article he read felt like a knife wound. She'd earned a master's degree while raising twins alone, started at Wellington as an administrative assistant, and rose through ranks on merit and brilliance. She'd given keynote speeches about resilience, written op-eds about single motherhood and corporate America, built a reputation as someone who fixed unfixable things. She'd become extraordinary despite him. No, she'd become extraordinary to spite him. And Monday morning, he would sit across from her and pretend he deserved to breathe the same air. The thought made him want to set himself on fire. Instead, he poured himself a drink and stood at his window, looking out at the city where Isabella was probably putting their sons to bed, reading them stories, being the parent he'd never been. His father had died, leaving Sam nothing but debt and disappointment. Sam had chosen to leave Isabella with nothing but herself and 2 babies. Somewhere in that parallel, there was a lesson about legacy and what it meant to build something that lasted. Sam just wasn't sure he was ready to learn it. Monday was coming. The reckoning was coming, and Sam Curran had never felt less prepared for anything in his entire life. What he didn't know was that the reckoning would cost him everything, and that losing everything might be the only way to find what mattered. Chapter 4. The Meeting Room Massacre. The Wellington Industries boardroom occupied the entire 42nd floor and had windows that turned the city into something abstract and conquerable, a grid of lights and lives that looked manageable from this height. Sam had been in 100 boardrooms like this, closed deals worth millions, negotiated contracts that changed entire industries. But standing outside the glass doors Monday morning, watching Isabella Grace arrange papers at the head of the conference table, he felt like a man about to face a firing squad. She wore navy blue today, a suit that probably cost more than his first car, with her hair pulled back in a style that suggested efficiency and absolute control. She moved like someone who'd mapped every inch of this room, who knew exactly where the power sat and how to claim it. Sam's CFO, Robert, stood beside him, reviewing last-minute notes. "Their restructuring proposal is aggressive," Robert said. "They want to cut almost half of middle management, consolidate departments, and implement new reporting structures within the first quarter. Ms. Grace has a reputation for moving fast and not negotiating on timelines." "I know her reputation." Robert glanced up from his tablet. "Do you?" "Because the business journals make her sound like some kind of corporate assassin. They say she restructured Meridian Corp so efficiently that their stock price doubled in 6 months, but half the executive team resigned rather than work under her new management structure. She's thorough. She's terrifying." Robert studied Sam's face with the particular intensity of someone who'd worked with him long enough to read his moods. "Are you all right? You've been strange all weekend." Strange was an understatement. Sam had spent the entire weekend researching Isabella, memorizing every article, every interview, every photograph he could find. He'd watched a keynote speech she gave at a tech conference last year, her voice confident and clear as she discussed the intersection of human capital and operational efficiency. She'd made jokes. The audience had laughed. She'd been brilliant, and Sam had watched it 3 times, looking for any trace of the girl he'd known, finding nothing except this polished, powerful stranger who'd built herself from the ruins he'd left behind. "I'm fine," Sam lied. "Let's get this over with." They entered the boardroom and suddenly Isabella was right there, close enough to touch, close enough that Sam could smell her perfume, something expensive and unfamiliar, nothing like the drugstore body spray she used to wear. She looked up from her papers and her eyes met his, and for one infinite second the entire world held its breath. Then she smiled, professional and empty, and extended her hand. "Mr. Curran, thank you for being punctual." Her voice was different too, refined, careful, every word enunciated like she'd spent years training herself to sound like someone who belonged in rooms like this. Sam took her hand and tried not to think about how many times he'd held this same hand in the dark, tracing the lines of her palm like they were maps to somewhere he'd never reach. Her grip was firm, brief, businesslike. "Ms. Grace." She released his hand and gestured to the seats. "Please, sit. We have a lot to cover this morning." The meeting started with introductions. Isabella's team from Wellington, Sam's team from Current Tech, everyone performing the ritual dance of corporate courtesy. Then Isabella took control of the room with the casual authority of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Let's begin with the operational assessment," she said, pulling up a presentation on the massive screen behind her. Current Tech has experienced impressive growth over the past several years, but that growth has created structural inefficiencies that are limiting your scalability. She clicked to the next slide, which showed organizational charts with areas highlighted in red. Your middle management layer is bloated. You have 17 people with overlapping responsibilities and no clear chain of command. This creates bottlenecks in decision-making and slows down your development cycles. Sam watched her transform into the architect, the woman who saw companies as puzzles to be solved, people as resources to be optimized, inefficiency as a disease to be cured. "We're proposing consolidation," Isabella continued, her laser pointer highlighting specific departments. "These 3 divisions can be merged under one director. These 2 teams can be restructured as a single unit with cross-functional capabilities. The result will be a leaner operation that moves faster and costs less." Robert leaned forward. "Those are people you're talking about. People with families, mortgages, lives." Isabella's expression didn't change. "I'm aware, which is why Wellington is offering a comprehensive severance package for affected employees, including 6-month salary, extended healthcare coverage, and job placement assistance. We're not heartless. We're just realistic about what it takes to remain competitive." She clicked to the next slide. "Additionally, we'll be implementing new performance metrics across all departments. Quarterly reviews instead of annual. Clear KPIs tied to compensation. The goal is to create a culture of accountability where excellence is rewarded and mediocrity is addressed quickly." For the next hour, Isabella dissected Sam's company with surgical precision. She identified every weakness, every inefficiency, every place where money was being wasted or talent was being misused. She proposed solutions that were logical, effective, and completely devoid of sentiment. She never once looked at him like she recognized him as anything other than the CEO whose company she was about to transform. Sam's team asked questions. Isabella answered them with patience and clarity. She had data for everything, examples from previous acquisitions, case studies proving her methods worked. She was prepared for every objection, every concern, every pushback. She was magnificent, and she was destroying everything he'd built with the same detachment a surgeon used to remove a tumor. "I understand this is a lot to process," Isabella said finally, closing her presentation. "Change is always difficult, especially when it affects people's livelihoods. But the alternative is stagnation, and stagnation in this industry is just death in slow motion." She looked directly at Sam for the first time since the meeting started. "Mr. Curran, I know you built this company from nothing. I know every employee feels like family, but family doesn't survive in the market. Efficiency does. Wellington is offering you the chance to scale beyond what you could achieve alone. We're offering you the infrastructure, the capital, and the expertise to become a market leader." "At what cost?" Sam heard himself ask. "At the cost of control. At the cost of comfort. At the cost of pretending that sentiment is a viable business strategy." Isabella's voice was gentle but firm. "You asked me to restructure your company. That's what I'm doing. If you're not ready to make hard choices, then perhaps this acquisition isn't the right move for either of us." The room went silent. Sam's team looked uncomfortable. Isabella's team looked impressed, and Sam felt like he was drowning in plain sight. Watching the woman he'd destroyed explain to him exactly how thoroughly she'd learned to destroy things in return. "No," he said quietly. "You're right. Proceed with the recommendations." Isabella nodded, satisfied. "Excellent. We'll begin implementation next week. My team will work with yours to manage the transition. I'll be on site 3 days a week for the first month to ensure everything goes smoothly." 3 days a week. 3 days a week of watching Isabella walk through his office, restructure his company, command his employees' respect and attention. 3 days a week of pretending she was a stranger. Sam thought he might actually die from it. The meeting concluded with handshakes and scheduling of follow-up sessions. Isabella's team filed out efficiently. Sam's team lingered, shell-shocked by the scope of changes ahead. Robert pulled Sam aside. "She's going to gut us." "She's going to save us," Sam corrected. "Everything she said was right." "Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt." "The best medicine usually does." Robert studied him carefully. "You admire her." "I fear her," Sam admitted. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm standing, you've been watching her like she hung the moon, and you're trying to remember how gravity works." Before Sam could respond, he noticed Isabella packing up her materials. Her team had left. They were alone in the vast boardroom. This was his chance, his only chance, to say something, anything, to acknowledge the history between them. He walked over to where she stood, organizing her laptop and papers with meticulous precision. "Isabella." She looked up, and for just a second, a fraction of a second, something flickered across her face. Recognition, memory, pain. Then it was gone, replaced by professional courtesy. "Is there something else we need to discuss, Mr. Curran?" The formality was a knife between his ribs. "I just wanted to say—" He stopped, unsure how to finish. Wanted to say what? That he was sorry. That he thought about her every day. That seeing her like this, powerful and untouchable, made him realize exactly what he'd thrown away. Isabella waited, perfectly still, perfectly composed. "Your presentation was excellent," he finished lamely. "Thank you. I've had a lot of practice." "I can tell." She closed her laptop with a soft click. "If there's nothing else, I have another meeting across town." "Right, of course." Isabella picked up her bag and moved toward the door. Sam watched her go, watched her walk away from him again, and felt something desperate claw its way up his throat. "I saw you," he blurted out, "at the bus stop last week." Isabella stopped walking. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Then she turned around slowly, her expression completely neutral. "I take the bus sometimes, less stressful than driving." "You were with—" He couldn't say it. Couldn't say "our sons," because he'd forfeited that right when he walked away. "With 2 boys. My sons," Isabella said, her voice suddenly colder than absolute zero. "Asta and Oleander. They looked like what, Mr. Curran?" The use of his formal name was deliberate cruelty, and they both knew it. Sam swallowed hard. They looked happy. Something in Isabella's expression shifted, softened microscopically. "They are happy. They have everything they need." "That's good. I'm glad." "Are you?" She took a step toward him, and suddenly the distance between them felt both immense and insufficient. "Are you actually glad that I managed to raise 2 children alone, while working 3 jobs and finishing my degree? Are you glad that they don't have a father because you decided being a parent was too inconvenient for your 5-year plan?" The words hit like physical blows. "Isabella." "Miss Grace," she corrected sharply. "In this building, in this context, I'm Miss Grace. Isabella died a long time ago. You made sure of that. I know I don't deserve—" You don't deserve to talk to me about my children. You don't deserve to know their names, their ages, what they like for breakfast, or what they want to be when they grow up. You are nothing to them, less than nothing. You're a gap they've never noticed, because I made sure they were so loved they never felt your absence. Each sentence was a precision strike, aimed at the exact places Sam was most vulnerable. You're right, he said quietly, about all of it. Isabella stared at him, and he saw something crack in her armor, just briefly, just enough to remind him that underneath the architect was still the girl he'd loved, the girl he'd broken. Do you know what the worst part is? Her voice was almost a whisper now. The worst part is that you made the right choice. You would have been a terrible father back then. You would have resented me and the boys, and you would have poisoned everything with your fear and your selfishness. So you were right to leave. You just should have been honest about why. What do you mean? You could have said, I'm not ready, I'm scared, I can't do this. That would have been honest. But instead you made it about me. You made it seem like you were doing me a favor by disappearing, like I'd be better off without you dragging me down. Isabella's eyes were bright with unshed tears she refused to let fall. That was the cruelest part. Not the leaving, the pretending it was for my own good. Sam had spent years constructing explanations for why he'd left, building elaborate narratives about impossible choices and no-win situations. But standing here now, watching Isabella dismantle every excuse with surgical precision, he realized the truth was simpler and worse than anything he'd told himself. He'd been a coward, not because circumstances were hard, but because he'd chosen to run instead of fight. You're right, he said again. I was selfish and scared, and I lied to both of us about why. And now? Isabella asked. What are you now? Still selfish, still scared, but at least I'm honest about it. She almost smiled. Almost. Well, honesty's a start. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder, transforming back into the architect right before his eyes. I'll see you next week, Mr. Curran. Please have your team ready to begin the transition process. Isabella, Ms. Grace, wait. She paused at the door. Would it be possible? Sam knew he was pushing his luck, knew he had no right to ask for anything, but he couldn't stop himself. Could we maybe have coffee sometime? Just to talk. Not about the acquisition. Just talk. Isabella considered him for a long moment. No, she said finally. We couldn't. She walked out, leaving Sam alone in the boardroom with 42 floors of empty air between him and the ground. But what Sam didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Isabella was about to face a choice that would destroy everything she'd built, and that choice had a name: Monica Harrison. Chapter 5. When the boys choose their father. Asta discovered the truth on a Tuesday afternoon while researching a science project about genetics. He was supposed to be learning about dominant and recessive traits in pea plants, but Asta had never been good at staying on topic. His brain worked in spirals, starting at the assignment and expanding outward until he'd researched everything related. So pea plants became Mendel's experiments, which became heredity patterns, which became a genetics calculator website where you could input traits and predict offspring characteristics. For fun, Asta input his own traits: green eyes, dimpled chin, blood type O positive, left-handed. The calculator asked for parental information. Asta hesitated, then input what he knew about his mother. Brown eyes, right-handed, blood type A positive. For father's information, the field sat empty. They'd always sat empty, his whole life. Just blank spaces where someone should have been. Asta had never minded before. Some kids had 2 parents, some had 1. His mama was worth 10 parents anyway, so he figured he came out ahead. But looking at those empty fields, he felt something he couldn't quite name. Curiosity, maybe, or the particular itch that came from unsolved problems. He Googled green eyes, brown eyes inheritance, and learned that green eyes were recessive. Both parents needed to carry the gene. His mother had brown eyes, which meant she was either carrying one copy or none. Asta frowned. This didn't make perfect sense. Then he Googled stuff about single mothers and genetics, which led him to articles about anonymous fathers and adoption, which led him to thinking about who his biological father was. His mama had always said, "Your father wasn't ready to be a parent, so it's just us, and that's perfect." She said it with such finality that neither Asta nor Oleander had ever pushed for details. Some questions hurt people, and they'd learned not to ask questions that made their mama's smile go sad. But sitting there with his genetics homework, Asta realized he actually wanted to know. He walked to Oleander's room, where his twin was lying on the floor, drawing in a notebook. "Do you ever think about our dad?" Oleander looked up, surprised. They never talked about this. "Sometimes," he admitted. "I wonder what he looks like. What if we could find him?" "How?" "Mama never talks about him." Asta grinned. "The internet knows everything." They spent the next week searching in secret. Asta was good with computers. He could find things. Oleander was good at noticing small details in old photos their mama kept in boxes. Together, they found pieces of a puzzle. An old photo from before they were born, their mama younger, smiling next to a man with green eyes. The photo was labeled on the back in their mama's handwriting, "Sam and Bella, Future Leaders Gala." Asta Googled Sam Curran and found pages and pages of results. But one kept coming up. Sam Curran, CEO of Curran Tech, recently acquired by Wellington Industries, where their mother worked. "That's too weird to be an accident," Oleander whispered. "That's him," Asta said, staring at the photo. "Look at his eyes. Look at his chin. That's our dad." They looked at each other, that twin communication that never required words. "Should we tell Mama?" Oleander asked. "Should we talk to him first?" "I'm scared." Asta studied Sam Curran's photo, the green eyes, the smile that looked like the one Oleander made when he was trying not to laugh. "I want to meet him," Asta decided. "I want to see what he's like." What if he's mean? Then at least we'll know. Better than always wondering. They spent another week planning. Asta found where his office was. Oleander practiced what they would say, writing it down and crossing out the parts that sounded too angry or too sad. Finally, on a Saturday morning when their mother was at the office preparing for a Monday presentation, they told Mrs. Harrison next door they were going to the library. Then they took the bus downtown to the address Asta had memorized. Curran Tech occupied floors 12 through 15 of a building made entirely of glass. The lobby had modern furniture and abstract art, and a security desk where a guard asked them to sign in. "We're here to see Mr. Curran," Asta said, trying to sound older than he was. The guard looked skeptical. "Do you have an appointment?" "It's personal. Mr. Curran doesn't take personal visits at the office." "Tell him Asta and Oleander are here. Just tell him our names." Something in Asta's tone must have convinced the guard, because he picked up his phone and made a call. There was a long pause. Then his eyebrows rose slightly. "He says to send them up." The elevator ride to the 12th floor felt like ascending to another planet. The boys held hands without discussing it, drawing courage from each other the way they always had. Sam Curran met them at the elevator doors. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. They all had the same eyes, the same hands, the same way of standing with weight shifted slightly to the left. Sam stared at them like he was seeing ghosts, and maybe he was. Ghosts of choices he'd made, of futures he'd abandoned. "You came alone." His voice cracked slightly. "Mama's at work," Oleander said. "Does she know you're here?" "No," Asta admitted. "But we needed to meet you. We figured out you're our dad." Sam closed his eyes briefly, like he was in pain. "You should come inside." His office was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture, photographs of technology products and awards ceremonies. No personal photos, no family, just work. "Please sit," Sam said, gesturing to a couch. "Can I get you anything? Water? Soda?" "We're not here for snacks," Asta said. "We came for answers." Sam sat across from them, looking simultaneously old and young, powerful and helpless. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," Oleander said. "Why you left. Whether you think about us, whether you're sorry. And if you have any health problems we should know about," Asta added. "That's important medical information." Sam made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "I think about you every day," he said quietly. "I'm sorrier than you could possibly understand. And no, there are no major health conditions, though my father had high blood pressure and my mother had migraines." "Why did you leave?" Asta asked. "Mama said you weren't ready, but people get ready. Why didn't you get ready?" Sam looked at these two extraordinary boys, one wearing a NASA t-shirt, one with paint on his fingernails from art class, and knew he owed them the truth. So he told them everything, about his father's death and the debt collectors and the impossible choices, about being young and terrified and overwhelmed, about choosing the easy pain of leaving over the hard pain of staying. "I told myself you'd be better off without me," Sam finished. "I told myself I was protecting you from my failures, but the truth is, I was protecting myself from possibly failing you." The boys were quiet, processing. "That was selfish," Asta said finally. "Yes, it was. But maybe," Oleander added carefully, "maybe it's better to have no dad than a dad who doesn't want to be there. Maybe. But I'll never know, because I didn't try." "Are you ready now?" Asta asked. "To be a dad?" Sam looked at them. These brilliant, brave children who'd tracked him down and demanded answers like they had every right to the truth, because they did. "I don't know if I'll ever be ready," he admitted, "but I'd like the chance to try. If you'd let me, if your mother would let me." "Mama's going to be so mad," Oleander said. "She should be. I deserve her anger." "Mama doesn't get angry anymore," Asta observed. "She just gets real quiet and works more. That's scarier." These children saw everything. They'd been raised by a woman who taught them to look directly at difficult truths. "Do you love her?" Oleander asked. "Our mama? Did you ever love her?" "I loved her more than I've ever loved anyone," Sam said. "I still do." "Then why?" "Because love isn't always enough. Sometimes you need courage too, and I ran out." Asta stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the city below. Oleander joined him. They stood side by side, these two perfect mirrors of each other, discussing something in whispers Sam couldn't hear. Then they turned around together. "We want to know you," Asta announced. "But we have to tell Mama first, that's fair." "She's going to be very upset," Sam warned. "Probably," Oleander agreed, "but she taught us to be honest, so we're going to be honest." "Can we come back?" Asta asked. "After we tell her?" Sam felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been frozen for years. "I would like that more than anything in the world." "Don't expect us to fix things with you and Mama," Oleander warned. "That's your problem, not ours." "I don't expect you to fix anything. I just want to know you." The boys nodded, satisfied with this answer. "What do you like to do?" Asta asked suddenly. "For fun. Do you have hobbies?" The question was so normal, so kid-like after the weight of everything else they'd discussed, that Sam almost laughed. "I used to build computers," he admitted. "Take them apart and put them back together just to see how they worked." Asta's eyes lit up. "I build telescopes from scratch. And I write poetry," Oleander added, "and draw things." "Those are both gifts," Sam agreed. They talked for another hour about school and projects and favorite subjects. Sam learned that Asta wanted to be an astrophysicist, and Oleander wanted to be a writer. He learned they were both terrible at sports, but good at chess. He learned they had their mother's laugh and her stubborn persistence. He learned he'd missed everything that mattered. When they finally left, promising to talk to their mother that evening, Sam stood at his window and watched them walk to the bus stop below. Two small figures in a big city, holding hands, facing the world together the way they'd probably faced everything their whole lives, without him. And for the first time in years, Sam let himself cry for everything he'd thrown away. What he didn't know was that this meeting would set in motion events that would cost him everything he'd built. Because Monica Harrison, his ex-fiancée, brilliant corporate attorney, and someone who didn't forgive easily, was about to make a phone call that would destroy them all. Chapter 6. The Conflict of Interest. Isabella knew something was wrong the moment she walked through her apartment door that evening. The boys were sitting at the kitchen table with identical expressions of determined nervousness, and Mrs. Harrison was nowhere to be seen, despite usually staying for dinner on Saturdays. The apartment was too quiet, the kind of quiet that came right before explosions. "What happened?" Isabella asked, setting down her briefcase. "We need to tell you something," Asta said. Isabella's heart immediately began cataloguing disasters. Someone got hurt, someone got in trouble, someone broke something. "We went to see him today," Oleander added. "Our father." The floor dropped out from under Isabella's feet. She set her keys down very carefully on the counter, using the small action to steady herself, to keep from screaming or crying or both. "Excuse me?" "We Googled him," Asta explained. "We found old photos of you together and his company and everything. We know he's Sam Curran. We know you're working with his company." Isabella felt something inside her chest crack and splinter. Her children, her babies, had found their father, had gone to him, without her. "You went to his office?" Her voice sounded strange, distant. "We took the bus," Oleander said. "We told Mrs. Harrison we were going to the library." "You lied." "We needed to know," Asta said. "We needed to understand." Isabella sat down at the table because standing was suddenly impossible. These boys, these extraordinary human beings she'd raised alone, had tracked down the man who'd abandoned them and demanded answers. Pride and terror warred in her chest. "What did he say?" "He told us everything," Oleander said, "about his father dying and money problems and being scared. He said he was selfish and wrong." "He cried," Asta added. "When we left, we saw him through the window." Isabella didn't know what to do with this information. Sam Curran crying over the sons he'd never met. Sam Curran being honest about his cowardice. Sam Curran existing in the same reality as her children after years of careful separation. "Are you angry?" Oleander asked quietly. Isabella stopped, trying to find words for the hurricane of emotions. "I'm angry that you lied. I'm scared that you went alone. I'm proud that you were brave." "We're sorry we lied," Asta said, "but we're not sorry we went." "He's not scary, Mama," Oleander added. "He's just sad." Isabella looked at her sons and saw herself reflected in their stubbornness, their need to confront difficult truths directly. She'd taught them to be brave. Now they were being braver than she'd ever intended. "Did he—" She had to stop, swallow the emotion. "Did he ask about me?" "He said he still loves you," Oleander reported. "He said love wasn't enough without courage." "He wants to know us," Asta continued. "If you'll let him. But he said it's your decision." Isabella stood abruptly and walked to the window, needing distance, needing air. The city sprawled below, indifferent to personal catastrophes. She'd spent years building walls around herself and her children, creating a fortress where Sam Curran couldn't touch them. She'd convinced herself those walls were protection. Now her own sons had opened the gates. "Mama?" Asta's voice was small. "What do you think?" What did she think? She thought this was impossible. She thought she couldn't navigate her professional obligations and her personal devastation at the same time. She thought. Her phone buzzed. Email from Wellington's General Counsel. Urgent. Meeting Monday, 8 a.m. Recurrent acquisition. Isabella's blood went cold. The subject line alone told her everything. Someone had found out. Someone knew about her history with Sam. And in corporate America, conflict of interest was a firing offense, especially for someone who'd risen as high as she had. She looked at her sons, at their hopeful faces, and knew she had to protect them from what was coming. "We'll talk about your father later," she said carefully. "Right now, Mama needs to make some phone calls." After the boys were in bed, Isabella called her boss, Richard Pemberton, Wellington's CEO. "Isabella, I was going to call you. I got the meeting request from legal." "Then you know we have a problem. How did you find out?" "Monica Harrison called me personally this afternoon. You're Mr. Curran's ex-fiancée, apparently. She's also one of the best corporate attorneys in the city, and she was very thorough in her concerns." Monica, of course, a woman scorned with legal expertise and nothing to lose. "Richard, I can explain. Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been overseeing the acquisition of a company run by your children's father without disclosing that relationship. That's not just a conflict of interest, Isabella. That's grounds for termination and possibly legal action." Isabella's world tilted. "I haven't let it affect my work. The restructuring plan is solid. My recommendations are based purely on—" "It doesn't matter if your work is flawless. It matters that you didn't disclose. The board is livid. They want your resignation. Richard, please." "However," he paused, "I convinced them to give you a choice." "What choice?" "You can stay on as VP. You can keep your position, your salary, your trajectory. But you have to complete the current acquisition exactly as planned, including the new directive the board just approved." "What new directive?" "Complete liquidation of Current Tech's consumer division. We're shutting it down entirely, selling the assets, and terminating everyone in that sector, including Sam Curran as CEO. We're keeping the enterprise contracts and absorbing them into Wellington's existing structure, but Curran himself is out." Isabella felt sick. That will destroy him. That division is his legacy, everything he built. "That's the point, Isabella. The board wants to make an example. They want to show that no one, not even you, gets special treatment. You complete this acquisition ruthlessly, you prove your loyalty is to Wellington, and you keep your job. Or you refuse, and we accept your resignation effective immediately. That's not a choice, that's extortion. That's business, and you have until Monday morning to decide." He hung up. Isabella sat in the dark of her apartment, her entire world crumbling around her. She could keep her power, her position, everything she'd built, but only by destroying Sam completely. Or she could refuse, lose everything she'd worked for, and prove that a single mother who'd climbed from poverty could be brought down just as easily. Either way, someone she cared about would be destroyed. And the worst part, she wasn't sure which choice would hurt more. Chapter 7. The Choice That Breaks Everything. Monday morning arrived like an execution. Isabella sat in Richard Pemberton's office at 7:30, watching the sunrise turn the city gold, waiting for the meeting that would determine everyone's future. She hadn't slept. She'd spent the entire weekend running scenarios, trying to find a third option that didn't exist. The boys had asked her repeatedly about seeing Sam again, and she'd had to tell them to wait, to be patient, while not explaining that their entire fragile reunion might be destroyed before it even began. Richard entered with legal, 3 attorneys in matching suits who looked like they'd prosecuted war criminals, and enjoyed it. "Ms. Grace," the lead attorney said, "let's discuss your employment status." For the next hour, they laid out the case against her. Monica Harrison had provided emails, photos, documented evidence of Isabella's past relationship with Sam. They had testimony from the security guard who'd seen the twins visit Sam's office. They had everything they needed to destroy her. "The board's position is clear," Richard said. "You have two options: complete the acquisition with the new liquidation directive or resign." "What if I recuse myself?" Isabella asked. "Let someone else handle the current acquisition?" "Too late. The damage is done. The board wants to see loyalty, Isabella. They want to know you'll choose Wellington over personal complications. By destroying a man's company, by putting hundreds of people out of work, by doing your job," the lead attorney corrected. "You're not being asked to do anything illegal or unethical. You're being asked to complete a restructuring that maximizes shareholder value. That's literally what you are hired to do. And if I refuse, then you're terminated for cause, conflict of interest. You'll lose your severance, your stock options, your reputation. Good luck finding another C-suite position after being fired from Wellington for ethics violations." Isabella looked at Richard, her mentor, the man who'd promoted her to VP. "You're really going to let them do this?" "I'm trying to save your career, Isabella. Take the deal. Complete the acquisition. In a year, this will all be forgotten, and you'll still have your position." "And Sam? What happens to him?" "Mr. Curran will be wealthy from the acquisition payout. He'll survive. But his company won't. Everything he built will be dismantled." "Yes," Richard agreed. "Just like you dismantled Meridian Corp and Thompson Industries and every other acquisition you've overseen. This is what you do, Isabella. Don't develop a conscience now." The words hit like a slap. He was right. She'd destroyed companies before. She'd fired CEOs, liquidated divisions, restructured entire corporations without losing sleep. She'd built her reputation on being the architect, the woman who could make hard choices without sentiment. But those CEOs weren't the father of her children. Those companies weren't built by the man she'd once loved. "I need to talk to Sam," Isabella said. "Absolutely not," Legal said immediately. "Any communication with Mr. Curran about this matter could be considered collusion or market manipulation. You're forbidden from discussing Wellington's plans with him until the official announcement." "When is the official announcement?" "Friday. The board votes Thursday night. You have until Thursday morning to commit to completing the acquisition, or we process your resignation." 3 days. 3 days to decide between everything she'd built and everyone she'd destroyed by building it. Isabella stood. "I'll have my answer Thursday morning." She left the office and went straight to the parking garage, where she sat in her car and finally let herself break. She'd spent years becoming someone who didn't need anyone, someone who could stand alone against anything, someone so armored that nothing could hurt her. But she'd forgotten that armor kept everything out, including the possibility of connection, of love, of being human enough to make mistakes and still be worthy of forgiveness. Her phone buzzed. Text from Sam. "I know about the board meeting. Monica told me what she did. I'm so sorry. This is my fault." Isabella stared at the message. Part of her wanted to rage at him. This was his fault, all of it. If he'd never left, if he'd been brave enough to stay, none of this would be happening. But part of her knew the truth. She'd chosen to oversee this acquisition. She'd chosen to bring him into her professional world. She'd chosen to keep the conflict hidden because some twisted part of her wanted to watch him squirm. And now they were both paying for those choices. She texted back, "We need to talk. Tonight, my place, after the boys are asleep." 3 dots appeared then. "I'll be there." That evening, after Asta and Oleander were in bed, they'd asked again about seeing Sam, and she'd promised soon, while knowing it might be never. Isabella waited on her balcony for the man who'd destroyed her once and was about to destroy her again. Sam arrived at 9, looking like he'd aged a decade in a week. "I'm so sorry," he said immediately. Monica called Wellington because she's angry at me, but you're the one paying for it. This is not entirely your fault, Isabella finished. I should have disclosed the conflict from the beginning. I didn't because... She trailed off. Because you wanted to hurt me, Sam finished. You wanted to oversee my company's acquisition because it gave you power over me. Yes, she admitted. I wanted you to watch me dismantle everything you built. I wanted you to see what I became without you. And now? Now the board is forcing me to choose. I can complete the acquisition, including a new directive to liquidate your consumer division entirely and terminate you as CEO, or I can resign and lose everything I've worked for. Sam's face went white. They're liquidating the consumer division? That's half my company. That's everything you built from scratch. I know. How many people? About 300 jobs. Gone. Sam sat down heavily. Because of Monica's call? Because the board wants to make an example. They want to prove that no one gets special treatment, that personal relationships don't influence business decisions. What are you going to do? Isabella looked at him. This man who'd broken her and was somehow, impossibly, still the person she measured all others against. I don't know, she admitted. If I complete the acquisition, I destroy you. If I resign, I destroy myself. Either way, someone loses everything. Then choose yourself, Sam said immediately. Choose your career. Choose your boy's security. I'll survive. Will you? Losing your company, your position, everything you've built? I survived losing you, he said quietly. I can survive losing anything else. That's not the same, isn't it? I lost the most important thing 13 years ago when I walked out of your apartment. Everything since has just been consolation prizes. Isabella felt tears threatening. Don't make this romantic. This is business. This is about our livelihoods, our futures. This is about whether you're going to let them force you to become someone you're not. You're not a destroyer, Isabella. You're a builder. You built yourself from nothing. You built a life for our sons. You don't have to prove your ruthlessness by destroying me. But if I don't, I lose everything I built. So build again. You did it once. You can do it again. I had nothing to lose back then. Now I have the boys. I have responsibilities. I can't just... You can, Sam interrupted. You can walk away from Wellington. You can find another job. You're brilliant, Isabella. Companies would line up to hire you. Not after I'm fired for ethics violations. Then start your own firm. Consult independently. Do something that doesn't require you to compromise who you are. Isabella laughed bitterly. You make it sound so simple. It is simple, difficult but simple. You choose what matters more, power or principles. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who clawed out of poverty. You don't know what it's like to have nothing. You're right, I don't. But I know what it's like to make the wrong choice because I was scared. And I know that I've spent every day since paying for that choice. Sam moved closer. Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't choose fear over what's right. What's right is making sure my sons have stability, security. What's right is showing them that their mother doesn't destroy people to save herself. What's right is proving that you're better than the system that's trying to break you. Isabella wanted to argue, to defend her position, to explain all the logical reasons why completing the acquisition made sense. But she couldn't, because Sam was right. If she destroyed him to save her career, she'd prove that everything she'd built was hollow. She'd prove that her power came from her willingness to hurt others, not from her ability to fix things. She'd prove that she'd become exactly what Sam had been 13 years ago, someone who chose self-preservation over love. I hate you, she whispered. I know. I hate that you're right. I hate that you're making me choose principle over security. I hate that after all these years, you still have the power to turn my world upside down. Then hate me, but do the right thing anyway. Isabella looked out at the city, at all those millions of lives being lived below them, and made her choice. "I'm going to resign," she said. Sam closed his eyes, relief and grief mixing on his face. "And then?" he asked. "And then I don't know. I figure it out. I build something new. I show my sons that their mother doesn't compromise her values for a paycheck. They're lucky to have you. They would have been luckier to have both of us." The words hung between them, an accusation and an invitation all at once. "I know I don't deserve to ask," Sam said carefully, "but after this is over, after the dust settles, could we try? Could we see if there's anything left to build from these ruins?" Isabella looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the boy she'd loved, and the man he'd become, and the father he was trying to be. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Ask me again after I've destroyed my career for you. Maybe then I'll have an answer." Sam nodded, understanding this was all he'd get. He left shortly after, and Isabella sat alone on her balcony, watching the city and wondering if she'd just made the bravest choice of her life or the stupidest. Thursday morning, she walked into Richard Pemberton's office and submitted her resignation. The board accepted it immediately, pleased to avoid the scandal. Wellington issued a press release. "Isabella Grace has decided to pursue other opportunities. We wish her well in her future endeavors." The current acquisition continued under new leadership and without the liquidation directive. The new COO had no personal vendetta, no need to prove loyalty through destruction. Sam's company would survive intact. By Friday afternoon, Isabella Grace was unemployed for the first time in her adult life, and Sam Curran understood that she'd sacrificed everything to save him. The question was, what happened next? Chapter 8. The Black Moment. 3 weeks after her resignation, Isabella sat in her apartment at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, wearing pajamas and drinking coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Her phone kept ringing with job offers, consulting positions, VP roles at smaller firms, opportunities that any rational person would jump at. She'd turned them all down, not because they weren't good positions, but because every single one came with a quiet understanding. "We know you were forced out of Wellington for ethics reasons. We're willing to overlook it, but you'll need to prove your loyalty to us." They all wanted the same thing Wellington had wanted, for Isabella to prove she'd choose the company over her principles, and she was done proving that. The boys were at school. The apartment was too quiet. Isabella's savings would last about 6 months if she was careful. After that, she didn't want to think about after that. Her phone buzzed, text from Sam. "Can I come over? I have news." Part of her wanted to say no. Seeing Sam reminded her of everything she'd lost, but part of her was desperately lonely, desperate for adult conversation that wasn't a job interview. Fine. The boys get home at 3:30. He arrived 20 minutes later with coffee. Real coffee, expensive coffee, from the place she used to go before she had to start watching her budget. "You look terrible," he said. "Thanks. That's exactly what every unemployed person wants to hear." "I mean, you look tired. When's the last time you slept?" "I sleep fine." "Isabella, I sleep fine when I'm not lying awake wondering how I'm going to pay for the boys' school next semester." Sam flinched. "I can help with—" "No, absolutely not. I didn't sacrifice my career so you could become my charity." "It's not charity. They're my sons too." "Now you want to claim them, now that I've lost everything?" The words came out harsher than she intended, but she didn't take them back. Sam set down the coffee very carefully. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be angry, but I'm trying to help. I don't want your help. I want my career back. I want to not feel like I've failed my children by choosing principle over security." "You didn't fail them. You showed them what integrity looks like." "Integrity doesn't pay rent, Sam. But I can. Let me help. Let me pay for school, for groceries, for whatever you need until you find the right position." And then what? I become financially dependent on you. The man who abandoned me becomes my savior. Do you not see how fucked up that is? Sam sat down, looking exhausted. I don't know what you want from me, Isabella. I'm trying to do the right thing. The right thing would have been staying 13 years ago. The right thing would have been not putting me in a position where I had to choose between my career and my conscience. The right thing would have been you facing consequences instead of me. You're right about all of it. Stop agreeing with me. Isabella's voice rose. Stop being so fucking understanding and agreeable. Get angry. Fight back. Give me a reason to hate you instead of hating myself. I can't, because you're right. This is my fault. Isabella threw her cold coffee at the wall. The mug shattered, coffee sprayed across the white paint, ceramic pieces scattered across the floor. Sam didn't move. Feel better? He asked quietly. No. Good. You shouldn't. We're both allowed to feel terrible about this. Isabella sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize for being human. You've spent years being perfect and controlled. You're allowed to break sometimes. I can't afford to break. I have children depending on me. And they have a father now. Let me help carry some of this. I don't know how to let anyone help me. I know, but maybe it's time to learn. They sat in silence, surrounded by broken ceramic and the ruins of Isabella's carefully controlled life. Finally, Sam spoke. I have news about the acquisition. I don't want to hear about. Wellington offered me a settlement, to go away quietly, to sign an NDA and never speak about the conflict of interest situation or your resignation. Isabella looked up. How much? Enough to make all your financial problems go away. Enough to cover the boy's education through college. Enough that you'd never have to worry about money again. Why are you telling me this? Because I turned it down. Isabella stared at him. You what? I turned it down. I told them to keep their money. I'm not signing their NDA. If anyone asks, I'm going to tell the truth. That you resigned rather than compromise your ethics, and that Wellington punished you for having a conscience. Sam, that money could make your life easier. I know, but taking it would make me complicit in what they did to you. And I'm done making choices that prioritize money over what's right. Isabella didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You're insane. That settlement could have been millions. Probably. But some things matter more than millions. Like what? Like proving to you that I've changed. Like showing our sons that their father is willing to sacrifice his comfort for what's right. Like, he paused, like earning even a fraction of what you sacrificed for me. Isabella felt something crack in her chest, something she'd been holding together through sheer will. I lost everything, she whispered. My career, my reputation, my sense of who I am. All because I couldn't destroy you. I know. And you think turning down a settlement makes up for that? No, nothing makes up for that. But it's a start. A start to what? To me, actually being someone worthy of you and our sons. To building something real, instead of just running from what I've destroyed. Isabella looked at this man who'd broken her and was somehow impossibly starting to fix himself. I'm still angry at you, she said. You should be. I deserve your anger. And I still don't trust you. I know. Trust has to be earned. And I definitely don't forgive you. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just a chance to prove I can be better. Isabella was quiet for a long moment. The boys want to see you, she finally said. They've been asking every day. What did you tell them? That adult situations are complicated, that sometimes good people make hard choices, that they'll understand when they're older. She laughed bitterly. All the things adults say when they don't know how to explain their failures. When can I see them? Saturday, but not here, somewhere neutral. The park maybe, and I'll be there the whole time. Of course. And Sam? If you hurt them, if you let them down or disappoint them or prove once again that you can't be trusted, I will make what Wellington did to me look like mercy compared to what I'll do to you. I understand. Do you? Because this isn't about you and me anymore. This is about two children who deserve better than the bullshit we've put them through. I know, and I swear to you, I won't let them down. You better not, because I've lost everything else. They're all I have left. Sam stood to leave, then paused at the door. You didn't lose everything, Isabella. You still have your integrity. You still have the respect of your sons. You still have the knowledge that when it mattered most, you chose principle over power. That's not nothing. It feels like nothing when I'm trying to figure out how to pay bills. Then let me help. Not as charity, as what I should have been from the beginning. A partner, a father, someone who carries their share. Isabella wanted to refuse. Wanted to tell him to leave and never come back, wanted to stay safe in her anger and her isolation, but she was tired, so tired of carrying everything alone. We'll talk about it Saturday, she said, after you meet with the boys. If that goes well, maybe we can figure out what comes next. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't even really hope, but it was possibility, and sometimes possibility was enough to keep breathing. After Sam left, Isabella cleaned up the broken mug and the coffee stain, then sat on her balcony and cried for everything she'd lost, and everything she might, possibly, impossibly, be building from the ruins. Saturday was coming, and for the first time in weeks, that felt like something other than dread. Chapter 9. Rebuilding from Ashes. The park was crowded on Saturday. Morning, full of families and dogs and children playing games Isabella's sons had outgrown. She sat on a bench watching Sam throw a frisbee with Asta, while Oleander showed her a poem he'd written about stars. "It's beautiful, Flower," she said, reading his careful handwriting. "It's about how stars are already dead by the time we see them," Oleander explained. "But they're still beautiful, still important." Isabella looked at her son, this perceptive child who saw metaphors in everything. "Are you talking about stars or people?" Oleander shrugged. "Maybe both. You're too smart for your own good. You say that like it's a bad thing." It wasn't a bad thing. It was terrifying and wonderful, and made Isabella wonder what kind of adults they'd become. These boys who saw through everything and forgave nothing except honest mistakes. Sam returned with Asta, both of them laughing about something. Asta immediately started explaining his latest telescope project. He wanted to build one powerful enough to see the moons of Jupiter. "That's ambitious," Sam said. "Do you need help?" "Maybe, if you have time." "I'll make time." Such a simple promise, but Isabella saw the weight it carried. Sam was offering consistency, presence, the everyday showing up that mattered more than grand gestures. The question was, could he maintain it? They spent 2 hours at the park. Sam was awkward but trying, asking questions, listening to answers, not trying to be anything other than present. The boys warmed to him gradually, sharing their interests, testing boundaries, seeing if he'd stick around or disappear again. Isabella watched it all with her heart in her throat, waiting for him to fail, to prove he couldn't handle this. But he didn't fail, he just showed up. When the boys ran off to the playground, Sam sat beside Isabella on the bench. "Thank you," he said, "for letting me be here. Don't thank me yet. One good afternoon doesn't erase 13 years. "I know, but it's a start." They sat in silence for a moment, watching their sons play. "I got a job offer," Isabella said finally. "Consulting firm, good money, flexible hours." "Are you going to take it?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me wants to start my own company, build something that's entirely mine." "What's stopping you?" "Fear, money, the practical reality that starting a business is risky. You're not afraid of risk. I am when my children's stability depends on me making the safe choice. Sam turned to look at her. What if you didn't have to make the safe choice? What if you had backup? We've been over this. I'm not taking your money. Not my money. My partnership. What if we started a company together? Isabella stared at him. You cannot be serious. Why not? You're brilliant at operations and strategy. I'm good at technology and product development. We'd be unstoppable. We'd kill each other within a week. Maybe. Or maybe we'd build something extraordinary. Sam, we can barely have a civil conversation. How would we run a business together? The same way we're parenting together, with clear boundaries, honest communication, and the shared goal of building something that lasts. Isabella wanted to say no immediately. The idea was insane. They weren't ready. She wasn't ready. But part of her, the part that had spent years building things from nothing, felt a spark of interest. What kind of company, she asked, hating herself for even considering it. Operational consulting with a technology focus. We help mid-sized companies optimize without losing their humanity. No ruthless restructuring, no mass layoffs, just smart, sustainable growth. That's idealistic. So, the world could use more idealism. Idealism doesn't pay bills. No, but excellence does. And we're both excellent at what we do. Isabella looked at him. This man who'd destroyed her and was somehow offering to build something new from the ruins. I'd need control, she said. Final say on all operational decisions. Done. And separate finances. Your money, my money, company money. Clear boundaries. Agreed. And if it doesn't work, if we can't make this partnership function, we dissolve it cleanly. No drama, no fighting, no making the boys choose sides. Of course. And Sam. She turned to face him fully. This isn't forgiveness. This isn't me saying what you did was okay. This is just pragmatism. Two people with complementary skills building something useful. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to understand that I still don't trust you. I'm trusting your desire to be a good father, but I don't trust your commitment to me. That's fair. Trust has to be earned. So earn it. Show up every day. Be consistent. Prove that you're not the man who ran away. I will. The boys came running back, breathless and happy. Mama, can we get ice cream? Oleander asked. Sam, will you come? Asta added. Isabella looked at Sam, at their sons, at the fragile possibility of something new being built. Yes to ice cream, she said. And yes, Sam can come. The boys cheered and ran ahead toward the ice cream truck. Sam stood and offered Isabella his hand to help her up. She hesitated for just a moment, then took it. His hand was warm and familiar and frightening in its normalcy. This doesn't mean anything, she said. I know. I'm just tired of standing up alone. I know that too. They walked toward the ice cream truck together, not quite a couple, not quite co-parents, not quite business partners, but something undefined and fragile and worth protecting. Over the next 3 months, they built their company from Isabella's dining room table. Grace and Curran Consulting opened with 2 clients, 3 employees, them plus 1 administrative assistant, and a mission statement Isabella wrote at 2 in the morning while Sam coded their website. The boys thought it was hilarious that their parents worked together, but still couldn't agree on anything. You argue about everything, Asta observed one Sunday when they were all working together. We don't argue, Isabella corrected. We have passionate professional disagreements. That's just arguing with bigger words, Oleander said. Sam laughed. Your brother's not wrong. But the arguing worked. Isabella's strategic brilliance balanced Sam's technical vision. His optimism tempered her cynicism. They pushed each other, challenged each other, made each other better at their work. And slowly, so slowly Isabella almost didn't notice, they became better at being people too. Sam showed up for school events. He helped with homework. He learned which twin was which even when they wore matching outfits. Oleander fidgeted more. Asta stood perfectly still. Isabella learned to accept help, to delegate, to admit when she was drowning instead of pretending she could breathe underwater indefinitely. They went to family therapy, all four of them, to navigate the complexity of building a family from broken pieces. The therapist said they were doing better than most intact families, which made Isabella laugh until she cried. 6 months after starting the company, they landed their first major client, a mid-sized tech firm looking to scale without losing its culture. Isabella presented the proposal. Sam demonstrated the technical solutions. They worked in perfect sync, finishing each other's sentences, building on each other's ideas. After the meeting, walking back to their shared office space, still modest, still careful with money, Sam said, "We're good at this. At client presentations. At being partners." Isabella didn't disagree. That night, after the boys were asleep, they sat on her balcony, drinking wine and reviewing the contract. "Do you remember the first time we sat on a balcony together?" Sam asked. "The apartment on 3rd Street. You were trying to impress me with your knowledge of constellations. I was failing miserably. You were sweet, young and sweet and convinced you could save the world. And you were brilliant and terrifying and didn't need saving from anyone. I needed saving from you, apparently." "Yeah, you did." They were quiet for a moment. "Sam?" "Yeah? I don't hate you anymore." He looked at her, surprised. "You don't?" "No. I'm still angry sometimes. I still don't fully trust you, but I don't hate you." "What do you feel?" Isabella considered this. What did she feel? It wasn't love. She'd buried love so deep she wasn't sure it could be resurrected. But it wasn't hatred either. "I feel like we're building something," she said finally. "Not what we had before, something different, something that might actually last, because it's based on who we are now, not who we were then." "I'd like that." "So would I." Sam reached for her hand, tentative, asking permission without words. Isabella let him take it. They sat together on the balcony, two people who'd destroyed each other learning how to build together, while their sons slept inside, dreaming of stars and poems and futures where anything was possible. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even quite love yet, but it was real, and real was enough. Chapter 10. The reunion earned through fire. 1 year after Isabella's resignation, Grayson Curran Consulting had 15 employees, 32 clients, and a reputation for transforming companies without destroying them. Isabella stood in their new office space, modest but theirs, paid for with money they'd earned together, and felt something she hadn't felt in years, pride, without wondering what she'd sacrificed to earn it. "Mama!" Oleander ran in after school, Asta close behind. "We got our project grades." Both boys had earned top marks. Sam followed them in, having picked them up like he did every Tuesday and Thursday. "They're brilliant," he said. "They get it from me," Isabella replied. "Obviously." The boys settled into their homework corner. Yes, they had one now, because this was their normal. Sam lingered by Isabella's desk. "Dinner tonight? All of us? That new Italian place? Is this a family dinner or a date disguised as a family dinner? Can it be both? I suppose it could be both." They'd been doing this dance for months. Not quite dating, not quite just co-parenting, but something in between. That was theirs alone. Isabella had kissed him once, 3 months ago, after landing their biggest client. It had been brief, terrifying, weighted with everything they'd survived. Sam had pulled away first. "Are you sure? I don't want you to regret this tomorrow." "I already regret everything about you. One more thing won't matter." But she'd kissed him again anyway, and it had been different from years ago, less desperate, more honest. They hadn't kissed since. Both too scared of breaking what they'd built. At dinner, Asta asked, Are you two dating? Isabella choked on her water. Sam's face went red. What makes you ask that? Isabella managed. You look at each other different now, like you actually like each other. When did you become so perceptive? Sam asked. I've always been perceptive. You just started paying attention. So are you, Oleander pressed. Dating. Isabella and Sam looked at each other across the table. We're figuring it out, Isabella said finally. That's a cop-out answer, Asta said. It's the only answer I have right now. After the boys were in bed, Sam lingered at Isabella's door. I should go, he said, not moving. You should, Isabella agreed, not stepping back. Are we dating, Isabella? She looked at this man who'd broken her and rebuilt himself, who showed up every day, who'd proven through 1,000 small actions that people could change. I don't know. We work together, parent together, build a business together. Adding romance seems complicated. Everything about us is complicated. Exactly. So why make it more complicated? Because maybe complicated is just another word for real, and maybe we've spent enough time pretending we're not still in love with each other. Isabella's breath caught. I never said I was in love with you. You didn't have to. I see it in how you look at me. I hear it in how you defend me to the boys. I feel it in how you let me help you now. You're very presumptuous. Am I wrong? Isabella wanted to say yes, wanted to stay safe behind walls, but she was tired of walls. No, she whispered. You're not wrong. Sam cupped her face in his hands, gentle like she was something precious. I love you, he said. I never stopped. I just spent years being too much of a coward to deserve you. And now? Now I'm still a coward, but I'm a coward who shows up every day anyway. Isabella laughed through threatening tears. That's the worst romantic declaration I've ever heard. I know. I'm terrible at this. You really are. But I mean it. Every word. Isabella kissed him then, properly this time, not tentative but certain, weighted with everything they'd survived and everything they were building. When they broke apart, Sam was smiling. Was that a yes? That was a, we'll figure it out. I can work with that. You better, because I'm not risking everything again for someone who doesn't know how to stay. I'm staying, I promise you, Isabella. I'm staying. Prove it. Watch me. 6 months later, Sam moved into Isabella's apartment. Not romantic, practical. They were together constantly anyway. The boys wanted him there, and splitting rent made financial sense. This doesn't mean we're getting married, Isabella warned. Wouldn't dream of it. And you sleep on the couch for at least a month. But Sam lasted 3 nights on the couch before Isabella admitted she slept better with him there. They got married on a Tuesday afternoon at the courthouse, just the 4 of them, and a judge. The boys were their witnesses. Isabella wore her client presentation suit. Sam wore his father's watch, the only thing he'd kept from that life. They promised to stay, to try, to build something real. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was real and flawed and theirs. That night, lying in bed together, Sam said, I never thought I'd get this. A family. Real partnership. Happiness. You almost didn't. I know, I threw it away once. Do you regret it? The path we took to get here? I regret hurting you, missing the boys' early years, but I don't regret where we ended up. This version of us, built from broken pieces, feels stronger. Because we know what it costs now. Exactly. Isabella turned to face him in the dark. I forgive you. The words hung between them. What? I forgive you. For leaving. For being a coward. For all of it. Sam's eyes filled with tears. Why? Why now? Because you earned it. Through 1,000 small acts of showing up. Through choosing us over comfort. Through proving people can actually change. Thank you, he whispered. Don't thank me. Just keep proving I made the right choice. Every day, I promise. And he did. Through the hard years when Grace and Curran struggled, through Asta's MIT acceptance and Oleander's first published poem, through the night Isabella woke screaming from nightmares about being broke, and Sam held her until the panic passed. Through all of it, he stayed. They fought. God, they fought about everything. But they stayed. 5 years after their courthouse wedding, Grace and Curran had grown into a firm with 50 employees and offices in 3 cities. They'd become known for transforming companies without destroying them. Isabella had been featured in Forbes. Sam had developed software that made their consulting scalable. Together, they'd built something that mattered. On their 5th anniversary, Sam took Isabella back to the park where they'd had their first supervised visit with the boys. "Why here?" she asked. "Because this is where we started rebuilding, not at the courthouse, here, with our sons watching us figure out how to be human together." Isabella looked at the familiar playground, remembering that terrifying Saturday. "You didn't disappoint them," she said. "I was terrified I would. You just showed up. That was enough." Sam pulled a small box from his pocket. "I know we're already married, but I never proposed properly. I never gave you a choice. We just did what was practical." Isabella's heart pounded. "Sam, let me finish." He opened the box, revealing a simple ring, not the massive diamond he'd given Monica, but something elegant and entirely Isabella. "I'm not asking you to marry me again. I'm asking you to choose this, choose us. Not because it's practical or because of the boys, but because you want to, because you love me, and we're better together than apart." Isabella looked at the ring, at Sam's face. "You're really bad at romantic gestures," she said, crying. "I know. This is essentially proposing to your own wife, which is ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. But yes, I choose this. I choose us, not because it's practical, but because somehow, impossibly, I actually love you." Sam slipped the ring onto her finger. "The boys are hiding behind that tree watching us, aren't they?" Isabella asked. "Absolutely. Oleander is probably recording it." Asta and Oleander emerged from hiding, both grinning. "Finally," Asta said. "You two are so slow at romance." "We got you a present," Oleander added, pulling out a folder. Inside was a poem, written in Oleander's handwriting, with Asta's illustrations, showing constellations and equations woven together. "The mathematics of second chances," Isabella read aloud. The poem talked about how broken things could be rebuilt stronger, how equations could balance after disruption, how dead stars could still light the way home. Isabella read it twice before she could speak. "You two are going to make me cry in public," she managed. "You're already crying, Mama," Asta pointed out. "They went to dinner, the 4 of them, this family built from broken pieces and stubborn persistence." Over dessert, Oleander asked, "Do you ever regret how everything happened?" Isabella and Sam looked at each other. "No," Isabella said, "because that version of us wasn't ready. We would have destroyed each other." "This version had to earn each other," Sam added, "and that makes it better, harder, but better." Isabella laughed, watching her family bicker and tease, and felt something she'd chased for years finally settle in her chest. Peace. Not the peace of having no problems. They still faced challenges, but the peace of knowing she wasn't facing any of it alone. That night, on their balcony, a different balcony now in the house they'd bought together, Sam said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me a second chance, for not letting me get away with being a coward, for building this with me. Thank you for proving you could change, for showing up, for loving our sons better than I thought possible." "Our sons," Sam repeated. "I'll never get tired of hearing that." They stood together watching the city lights, 2 people who'd destroyed each other and built something beautiful from the ruins. The price of forever, they'd learned, wasn't perfection. It was persistence. It was choosing each other every single day, even when the choice was hard. It was showing up, again and again and again, until showing up became home. And home was exactly where they both belonged. Years later, when Asta graduated MIT and Oleander published his first poetry collection, when Grace and Curran became a national firm, when Sam and Isabella celebrated their 20th anniversary, they would look back on this moment, this balcony, this peace, this choice, and they would know they'd paid the price, and forever was worth every single cost. The end.